Hello, and welcome to our final week of Connect 2021, Building Community and Adapting for Tomorrow, Government Executive Media Group's virtual market preview. I'm James Hansen, Vice President and Publisher at NextGov. Though it may seem hard to believe, 2021 is right around the corner. A new year means new opportunities. Let's hear from our partners and market shapers on what they're looking forward to in the coming year.
For 2021, the thing I am most excited about is the role of artificial intelligence across our federal government marketplace. The largest technology transformation that our customer has ever taken on is underway right now. The proverbial train is roaring down the tracks, and I'm looking forward to how we as a community partner with the federal government to make this technology transformation the most successful ever.
One of the things that I'm most excited about for 2021 is the continued rise of digital marketing. This past year, we saw a major hit to some of the traditional ways that we've reached our government customers. Many marketers who had a heavy emphasis on events found themselves scrambling to meet customer acquisition goals and having to quickly pivot to an increased focus on content and digital marketing. Next year, I'm excited to see how we collectively can push the boundaries of what digital has to offer. From micro-targeted advertising campaigns to creating and promoting snackable content at scale, today's digital landscape offers us almost limitless possibilities for delivering customer-centric messages that deliver conversions. I, for one, know that digital is going to be king for Acoma in 2021.
What I'm excited about for 2021 is pretty simple, and I have 2 points. The first would be to get back into the office. Sure, the home office is great, but after 6 to 7 months, you want to get back into the office to meet with leadership, stakeholders. Pretty much anybody would be fun at this time. The second thing would be getting out to live events. Nothing says Cisco marketing is when we're out in the field to talk to customers, partners, pretty much anybody that can show how we can create mission success for them.
What am I most excited about for the future of government marketing? The power of digital. I really believe that COVID has forever changed the IT landscape and how we market to our government customers. And it's really important now more than ever that we embrace digital and get the right news and information to our customers to help them understand how our products and solutions can help them meet mission. So not only from enhancing our digital properties, but also thinking about our marketing mix and how we're leveraging new and innovative ways to reach our government audience in a digital way.
I'm excited to start using the word pivot, just a little bit less. But I'm also excited to see how we as marketers leverage the lessons learned and the successes taken from the virtual and digital environment that we were thrust into earlier in 2020. We really doubled down on those types of platforms, and I'm excited to see how our creative juices bring us to the next level, how we get better executing them, and how we deliver better value of messaging to our customers and prospects.
I'm really looking forward to continuing to innovate, collaborate, and work with folks online. And then ideally, 2021, come on, let's get that vaccine so we can all get back together and innovate in person.
What we're looking forward to in the future is more digital information sharing, really robust platforms that are really experiential, and also stronger account-based marketing as we use artificial intelligence in our marketing efforts.
At Pure, we're most excited with the prospect of getting back to face-to-face interactions with our customers, prospects, partners, and colleagues to whatever extent that's going to be possible. With that said, I'm really proud of how we've been able to pivot to a digital and virtual model and expect to continue to grow and prioritize those capabilities.
Something I'm really excited about in 2021 is the convergence of consumer and government-based marketing. And what I mean by that is we all watch Netflix, Hulu, YouTube, and you have the 30-second commercials. Well, now there's the ability for government marketers to actually show their products or services through those commercials very easily through the technology that's available today. So I'm very excited in 2021 about that convergence of consumer and government-based marketing.
What I'm looking forward to in 2021 is how I can learn from folks like you. It's been incredible to watch the innovation that's happened in our market as we've pivoted from in-person events to digital events and other new ways and approaches to reach our customers. I'm really excited to see what the next calendar year has in store for us.
What are you excited about in 2021?
The COVID-19 vaccine. I mean, we're definitely not going to go back to, I mean, it's not like January 1st, everything reverts back to the way it is. But I actually think there's been a lot of good stuff that we've discovered, through this remote working. And I think it's forced us to do a lot more digitally. And I think that's great.
I'm hoping for a Zen 2021, and that may be futile.
What I'm excited about is the idea to try something new and to focus on the digital aspect of marketing.
Going into 2021, looking to see how soon can we get back to actually networking in person, because I definitely do miss that.
What am I excited about for 2021? Well, I think probably like all of us, excited for the day when we can say things are truly back to normal. But actually, I think I'm excited that we're moving beyond trying to wait out this new environment, and that we're actually becoming focused on how to leverage what's good about it and how to compensate for what's hard about it, and really just keep moving forward. And I think we've all gotten so much better at communicating and connecting in a virtual environment. And I think those skills are going to carry forward.
But I am hopeful that at some point in 2021 that we will have in-person events at some scale, because they're so important for our market.
Hi, it's Linda Cohn, and I think we can all agree we have had a record-breaking year of extreme pivots and hard passes. Everyone has had to step up their game, as many have noted before me. Looking into the 2021 season, James, there could not be more excitement in the stands and on the field. Let's get it. Let's go.
Thanks, Linda, and let's play ball. Personally, I'm looking forward to see my colleagues around the office in 2021, as well as how government will continue to implement and invest in emerging technologies. Thank you all to my friends and colleagues who have shared their thoughts. In government marketing, a primary objective is to engage the government leaders who not only make purchase decisions, but define the missions of their respective agencies. Today's session will give you a behind-the-scenes look at what content, programming, and tactics work best to build relationships with government's most influential leaders. I'm pleased to introduce today's panelists, who we've had the pleasure of working with at several NextGov and Defense One events. Former federal CIO Suzette Kent and former Deputy Director for Management at OMB, Margaret Weichert. Leading our session is Frank Salato, VP and GM of Marketing and Communications at Government Executive Media Group, and my friend. Take it away, Frank.
Hello, and welcome to the final week of Connect 2021. My name is Frank Salato, Vice President of Marketing and Communications at Government Executive Media Group. We've talked a lot about a new era in government marketing across the duration of our virtual market preview this year. It's a shift to a pure digital environment where leveraging rich data, upping the production quality of content, and building and activating communities is what will set brands apart. This is a massive change to the landscape. But what isn't changing is the outcomes we as marketers all need to achieve. And one of those critical objectives always is to find and build relationships with key government leaders and purchase decision makers. So what are the best ways to do that? And how might that look different this year? These are the questions we will explore today with two former government leaders who can give us an inside view. I'd like to welcome Margaret Weichert, former Deputy Director for Management at OMB, and Suzette Kent, former federal CIO. We feel so fortunate that you both were able to join us for this discussion, so thank you. Thank you. I want to start with an update of sorts. You both have been major figures in our market over the last couple of years. So how are you? And what have you been up to since leaving your respective posts earlier this year? Margaret, do you want to kick us off?
Sure thing. It's an honor to be here, and it's nice to be back among folks who are working in the government sector. Since March, I have joined Accenture, where I lead the North American payments practice. Not direct government service, but solving complex business problems with our payments clients, and have actually spent a little bit of time working on the payroll protection program, which has benefited greatly from a lot of the work that Suzette and others in government have done to modernize technology and service delivery for the 21st century.
Suzette, how about you?
Thanks, Frank, also for having us. As I departed in July, I've returned to my home state of Texas. And, I had some personal priorities that have been front and center. Those have been very interesting considering we have been in a historic hurricane season. But in between that, I've had the opportunity to continue to work on some of the important topics of data, AI, and building the workforce of the future. So I am personally working with some universities around how we prepare our workforce for the future, and some private sector companies and how we continue to grow our national economy.
Very exciting. Well, thank you both for the update. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't start the conversation today with the pandemic. What priorities have you all seen come to the forefront in government? And what do you expect these priorities to look like over the next several months? Suzette, would you take the lead on this one?
Sure, certainly. Well, the conversation is continued much in the way that you opened this, around how do we operate in an environment that is much more virtual, regardless of what operate might mean, to your business, whether that is interacting with citizens or interacting with clients, or the way that we learn, or the way that we just do the, business of specific areas. And for the federal agencies, that has been really important to continue to do that, and do that in a very safe way. What has been very exciting to me, and was part of the agenda for both Margaret and I when we were in the federal government, is the continued focus and acceleration of things around digital delivery of services and capabilities. That's been fantastic. And that's been both, we've seen that definitely in the public sector, but private sector as well in those companies, and the importance and focus on data, particularly, as you mentioned, pandemic, sharing health data, the accuracy, how quickly that can be done, and how that can be shared with various audiences that are contributing. And that let us tap into some of the things that were in the federal data strategy, but also across the board, public and private sector, raise the stakes on standards and sharing and dialogues about those things. So I'm hopeful those two sets of learnings in those areas are things that we're going to continue to move forward, for the benefit of both citizens and our private sector businesses. Margaret, what'd I miss?
Well, I think Suzette hit it nail on the head, and I feel really grateful that folks like Suzette and others like Emily Murphy at GSA were carrying the ball on both IT modernization, data accountability and transparency, as well as people in the workforce for the 21st century, because literally the pandemic is a perfect showcase, a horrific showcase, but a perfect showcase for how we need to build in flexibility and agility into government service. And I think the only things I would amplify, there's been a lot on procurement that's taken place in the pandemic. That's, we've put pressure on things that we might have known were challenging to procure, but we need to do them even more rapidly. So, for example, procuring IT services to help support the shift to a virtual workforce, even getting laptops in an environment where the entire world was going to work from home has been a challenge. But I think the hardening and the modernizing we've been doing through the president's management agenda has set us up well for that. And I applaud the public servants across the federal government who've helped lean in and meet the challenges of this unusual time.
Yeah, and I'd actually like to follow up a little bit on that exact point, Margaret. what's next on that front as it relates to workforce and kind of the drastic shift to the way the federal workforce actually works? Do you see any solutions or support that the workforce will need from industry over the next year, or any other priorities that'll come to light kind of in this area?
So I think what we dealt with, between March and let's say May was kind of the immediate first order move to remote workforce. How do you get people provisioned with laptops and the ability to just connect and be serviced from their homes? I think the second order opportunities are starting to emerge now. How do you make the way of work more truly digital? So case management is something that has been a challenge given the legacy infrastructure many agencies have. But to be able to seamlessly work from home and deal with, let's say, retirement cases that are taking place when federal employees retire, or deal with Social Security case files in a secure, effective, and easily monitored way, that's going to be a priority. I also think citizen self-service is going to be an increased priority so that we can have a lot of the inbound calls that today, a lot of the call volume has undoubtedly gone way up, to have seamless capabilities to be able to deliver more of that through self-service channels.
Frank, I would just add into that, one of the things that's been both exciting but also really interesting is that in many of those digital formats that Margaret was talking about, we had the capabilities, but that was looked at, people use that as a convenience, not necessarily as their primary mode of doing business and interacting, whether it was the government or whether it was with their grocery store. But we've seen a significant shift into that being a primary mode. So what that has created is more demand. It's also created some analysis and introspection, of when something is a convenience, we might have engineered it or created it in one way, but when it's in the primary mode and that's driving the bulk of customer or citizen or whatever, service level interaction, we think about it in a different way. So we've seen not only increased adoption, but it's to shine the light on some new and higher priorities for continuing to improve sets of services and those capabilities and link things, make them more consistent, have greater personalization. So it's been a huge emphasis not only on adoption, but moving that mode of interaction up to a high priority, whether you're a federal agency or a private sector company.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I want to shift a little bit to the other major topic in our market, which is the next 4 years. So we're recording this prior to November 3rd and releasing it after Election Day. So I'll pose this question regardless of the outcome. What's top of mind for government leaders right now? And how might their focus shift over the next few months? Suzette, when we met in preparation for this call, I really appreciated your thoughts on this. So I'll start with you here.
Oh, thanks. Well, and Frank, when we were prepping for this call, I know that I shared and believe very passionately that technology modernization and citizen services are on any agenda. It does not matter. It needs to be a focus of our government as a mode of serving citizens, and so whatever happens, it stays top of mind. And modernization in the way the government operates, technically, and business processes is on the agenda for our nation and our world. America being a leader in AI and use of data is critically important. So those agenda items don't change. What we do hope to see is continued urgency. And we hope to see through the various, whether it's in agriculture or energy or defense, we hope to see those continued focus on how those themes are integrated into their strategies, their priorities, and the things that they focus their resources on.
Margaret, would you have anything to add on the next 4 years and this kind of key topic for us?
I think that the main thing is, in addition to the things that Suzette mentioned, agility in all of our government capabilities, the ability to respond to a world that is increasingly volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. That's something that you may reframe exactly what your priorities are when it comes to the end applications, but the underlying infrastructure needs to be modernized and agile enough to deal with a world where priorities do shift, where we know that disasters happen. We don't necessarily know when and where, but we know that increasingly we're dealing with a range of disasters, greater weather-related disasters. And I think the pandemic has showcased the situation around public health being just a transformational shift in needs, but the underlying infrastructure that can support that, if it's agile, it doesn't need to know what the end outcome is. It needs simply to be ready to respond.
Certainly. So thank you both for your thoughts on that. I do want to pivot a little bit more into marketing. For many of the folks watching this, and I alluded to this earlier, one of their primary goals is to engage government leaders. So help give us that inside view. When you were in your recent roles, what did brands do that really resonated with you? And the flip side of that, were there any things that a brand might have done that were less engaging, that didn't exactly activate you in any way? Margaret, do you want to start with this one?
Sure. The thing that really helped me a lot, and I would have the most amount of time for, was when a brand actually internalized the priorities that we had published. In the case of the President's management agenda and the cross-agency priority goals, there were literally, hundreds of pages of information out there about our priorities. And when it was clear that a brand had identified what we cared about and shared their story in the context of that, that was the most helpful.
Frank, I know when we were preparing for this discussion, this was a really charged area because Margaret and I both talked about the things that we loved and the things that were maybe not so useful. And when they're not so useful to your audience, it's not the best use of time of your marketers. But echoing what Margaret said is use the terminology and talk on topic, whether it is someone in a central role or an agency role, about the things that they have shared that are on their agenda, and show data and case studies and examples that are applicable. When I saw that means that the brand and that person that wanted to communicate had invested in listening and understanding and put some thought into what they could contribute. And that was worth my time as well. When someone sent me their latest marketing spiel that I didn't recognize, any of the words, and they weren't on any of the topics that we were working on, that quickly went to the trash folder, because that is not something that we're going to act on. And I think if there's one bit of advice for the marketers, is understand, the agency strategies, understand the administration priorities, understand well the citizens who are being served and, their priorities. And if you're doing what you're sharing based on those, you're going to get a much better reception.
Well, that's really interesting, because I think what you guys are both talking about is, marketers being able to deliver content that is personal to your specific job at any given time. And then the advantage that they have is your specific priorities are in the public, they are known. So they just have to use that information to deliver that sort of content. You touched a little bit on formats, less on formats, but things that in terms of content that you like to see that really grabbed your attention. You guys mentioned data. Were there any other types of content formats that really stood out, coming from a brand?
So case studies were absolutely helpful, particularly if again, they connected and did the work for me to say where this was actually relevant to my agenda. And even if it was, an email, it caught my attention in the header. So I didn't have to figure out where it fit. Because if I have to spend any time doing that, I think most executives in government were like me, probably got between 100 and 200 emails a day. Triage to just keep head above water means that email needs to be decisioned in less than 10 seconds. And so if it has a clear header and then some data or a case study that's going to draw me in right out of the gate, then it'll go in the file where I, look at it when I have a little more time.
Frank, the ones that, whether they were email or video or presented in other formats that came from the angle of results achieved, that was really interesting, and particularly results achieved based on the impact, whether it was a researcher or a warfighter or a citizen, like here's what they got out of this, and then kind of backing it in. The other thing that I know specifically from the technology community they found very helpful is many times when it was attached to a testimony from someone inside the government. So I would add this one other thing for marketers who address all industries. There are many times that when the success is big Fortune 500 company A, or this particular retail company, there's a level of skepticism that some folks in the government look at and say, yeah, but they can't do, they could do X and Y, or their process looks different, or things. When there is someone inside a federal government, sometimes a state and local, that had to jump through the same hoops and follow the same, some of the same processes, but also we know from serving a wide, diverse population and ensuring the right kinds of accessibility compliances and things like that. When there's an example inside government of that success, that's even more interesting. And I know we would often sponsor pilots and do pilots just to figure out that answer, because there were sometimes so many who were interested, but it was a big investment, to go first. And if marketers have those types of examples, they're going to make the total time of the interaction faster and the quality of the interaction much better.
Yeah, that's so helpful, that breakdown from both of you. I want to also ask about, amid the pandemic, many marketers have had to rethink the premise of reaching government leaders, quote, where they are. So for you personally, and Suzette, I'll start with you here, would like you to kind of share with us if your media or content consumption habits have changed at all over the last several months, and if so, how?
Well, I think as they rethought the way that they traditionally interact, a lot of those things were done in person, right? And particularly sometimes we did in the government, space, there were trade shows and things like that where I would say those who were interested self-selected in. And I think that's a harder, in a digital world, marketers to have that level of precise understanding of who is interested in the right timing, that makes it a little bit harder. I also think, though, that the individuals who self-selected in that one-on-one environment are still going to go out and use digital means to find information. They're going to look for the quality information Margaret and I just talked about, testimonials, case studies, real examples. And they're going to probably find that on the internet. They're going to look at certain brands. They're going to talk to their peers. And, that I think as marketers think about how they make their own content available, there's some shifts in that frame because you're not serving it. You're waiting for someone to self-serve. So I think that's a different concept in how they might think about putting that out there. And that's a really important mode I think we're going to be operating in for quite a while.
Interesting. And Margaret, I know you mentioned, some changes in your habits with social media, especially over the last few months.
Yeah. So, particularly when channels of media become very time consuming, I think, cutting through the noise in the channel is really important. And, having a place to go where there is a conversation happening that draws me back in is really important. So one of the things that I think is a thought, when I think about what I have chosen to participate in virtually, it's very often been when a couple of key brands, and not just commercial brands, but also potentially media brands, GovExec could be a good example of one, but also good government groups. If they're pulling something together around some topic that I care about, I'm going to participate in that. Service to Citizens was actually an award ceremony that I attended, not only because I received an award, which is nice, but it was a topic that was really important, and it had a number of the people having the conversation that I actually respect in that realm. And so I think curation is the most important thing in a cluttered environment and a digital environment, that it's not just about first come, first serve. It really needs to be about fostering a good conversation, and who will help do that. And you may need to lean in a little bit harder and figure out what's the value proposition to get those people at the table. But if you've got that kind of conversation focus and that right curation, I think you're poised to make it worth people's while.
Yeah. And I think what I'm hearing too, and I've heard this before from both of you, is the channel is less important. You have to be adding value to your specific mission at any given time.
Yeah.
So
if somebody can colonize Twitter and figure out how to, filter out all of the noise and just have it be about the conversations I care about, that would be wonderful. But some of that comes and goes.
Well, I want to get to something that you mentioned a little bit ago, Suzette, which was skepticism that you had with some brands. For marketers, engaging the government leader is just the start. You have to sustain that engagement and build a relationship with a brand where ultimately you, the leader, might be comfortable engaging with the brand staff, like a subject matter expert on a podcast, or like a sales team member, if that's where the conversation is. I mean, ultimately, that's the objective that the marketers want to achieve. But it does start with trust. So how can brands build their relationship with a government leader, and how can they keep trust over time Suzette, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah. Sure, and it's a great question. It's one of the ones that I start or I answer almost with a really simple thing: is results. Show results, and results that were produced in a way that created not only a great outcome, but a good experience for the individuals who were involved. So the team that worked with that brand, the process, the people who are now living and working with whatever thing was implemented or deployed on an everyday basis. And when those things happen, you're building a high degree of trust. And one of the things that we spent a lot of time talking about, and I know Margaret and I would meet with companies and say this, and it was a little bit more important in the technology space, but it's important in every single space. When you bring something in as a vendor, it's your responsibility to make sure that the people who are then going to be living and working with that thing every day, they know it, they understand it. They understand, what the long-term life cycle is. And that's how we get the best results, long-term, for everyone involved. So I think as you seek to build trust, delivering results is important, but also being honest about what you're really good at and what you're not. I think some relationships have had some, really stubbed their toes and taken years and years to recover when they've reached too far or pushed too far, into something and not been, really open about whether that thing could be accomplished or not, and built the right, team around it. So it's a trust and honesty inside both the organization that's presenting an idea, but a partnership and teaming with those who are receiving it that goes beyond a single transaction. It goes through the duration of whatever the business process and those being served, how they interact with it.
That's right. Margaret, would you have anything to add there?
I think the one thing, and Suzette covered a lot of great ground there, the one thing I would also say it's important when talking about results to make sure that you're characterizing those results in the context of a public service mission, service, and stewardship. Because an ROI, if it's the kind of ROI that works for a private sector company, is not going to resonate with public servants. They need to know this is going to hit the metrics around their mission. Does it help get, men and women back on the moon? Does it help us improve data quality in our health missions? Cost effectiveness for the taxpayer, really important, but also service. Can we, particularly in this kind of complex, fast-moving environment that we're in, can this easily be modified over time? There are a lot of solutions that get hardwired in government, and then they make it really difficult to change over time. That might seem like a good commercial strategy, but it is not one that engenders trust. And what I can say that is really important is our workforce is here for the long term in the public sector. So they will remember if a commercial entity puts something in that wasn't in the long-term best interest of sustaining that mission and service and stewardship. And I know Suzette and I spent a fair amount of time where there were players that were probably making a pretty penny on, let's say, software licenses or other things that weren't really needed or weren't really keeping up. And future-proofing and helping do that is how you build trust and sustainability for the long term.
Hey, Frank, I want to add something to that before we go away from this question, because it was one of the ones that we spent a lot of time and energy on, and I think many would, and it's different for government. So this message is for your marketers who might cover public and private sector, or might be newer to public sector. We used to say to people, who cares? Who cares? And that Margaret said about the mission. Is this going to help us get someone, boots on the moon faster, right? Is this going to feed our nation, ag? Is this going to, whatever that outcome is? And the reason that is so critically important is it's not just administration priorities and agency mission. It's also important to how we fund, right? And you think about the relationship, with Congress, and those individuals who are making some of the funding decisions have to understand why that's important to someone that they serve. And the person who asked them to be, stewards of that part of the process. So in the public sector, it takes a bigger group of individuals to agree on that thing versus, kind of private sector when it's about the shareholders, the customer, maybe some of the executives of the company. That it's a more complex equation. And the things that energize every one of those audiences is making something, happen that's related to mission, that achieves one of our national objectives or achieves a citizen objective. So translate it that way.
Well, I think that translation is something that a lot of public sector marketers, that's top of mind for them, because they're often sitting to the side with another division that commercially is doing something else for their company. So that's a really good point. The other thing that really stood out was what you said about just how important brand is. Trust. You mentioned expertise, customer service. We do a leading brand study every year where those are the perpetual themes that really rise above and what matters for not just government leaders like yourselves, but anybody who's making a purchase decision at an agency. So that's just really interesting that you're echoing that. The other thing I want to hear from both of you on is events. Events have been a staple in our market for a long time. This is an area of government marketing that has changed tremendously due to COVID-19, as you can imagine. Complete shift to virtual events. Margaret, I want to start with you first on this. Based on what you've experienced, digital one, of course, being also a digital event, what formats and activities would be the most worth the time of a government leader?
So I think packaging things into bite-sized chunks is critical. I don't know about everyone, but I know my schedule has gotten fuller, and each of the items on my schedule has been shorter. My day might be chopped up into, between 14 and 20 different discrete elements. And so that is a real challenge for trying to get me to participate in a live event. So asynchronous type events, pre-recorded videos and things of that nature, things where I could actually multitask and participate in one form or fashion. I personally value, and that's a place actually where I find Twitter to be useful. If people create a channel around an event I'm not able to attend, I can at least see what the conversation is like around that. At the end of the day, for me, if there's a data hook, I will make time even out of my, desired, sort of 8 to 8 time frame. If I feel like there's some data that I don't already have. So hopefully that's helpful.
Absolutely. Suzette?
Yeah, Frank, when I is, in the government and even now, I think about them in a little bit of, I evaluate my own to participate in the value of that thing based on whether I want to communicate a message, I want to learn something, or I want to collaborate with other experts, right? my purpose for attending also kind of filters into how I evaluate the event. So Margaret and I both talked a lot about we had to purposefully make investments, and I saw the CIOs of agencies do this. I'm watching the CDOs now. We watch lots of agency leaders. They go to forums to communicate their priorities so that they're clear. And hopefully what they're doing is they're inviting us to engage with them on those topics. So that's important is, can you share? Is it aligned with the message you want to share? Can you reach the individuals with whom you want to share that message? When I want to learn, there's a lot more freedom in that. Like sometimes I might, pop on social media and find who's talking about what. You can go search for the content yourself. You can directly, kind of go to even some of the brands keep, running case studies. So sometimes you can self-serve, or you can look at, what kind of events are going on and choose to participate in those things. I think the hardest one is collaborate, because sometimes the digital format is a lot harder. And it's even harder sometimes to get the right players in that collaboration. And in those kinds of situations, Margaret mentioned, good government group or special topics. I know that I have sought those out. And even though that may take longer and may take a bigger investment, I'll make that investment because I want to hear and be in a conversation with multiple experts or multiple different perspectives. And for that, there's a lot more leniency in the time frame and the way it's presented, but it's a lot harder to find. So those are kind of the boxes that I look at when I'm looking at the landscape of everything that's available.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple nuggets of advice coming out of what both of you said from a marketing perspective. The pre-recorded nature is going to be very helpful in getting a high-level speaker like yourselves involved. And then the on-demand nature when you're in that learning mode is also going to be really critical to make it accessible for you when you have that moment at hopefully inside that 8 to 8, Margaret, right? Okay, great. So we're nearing time. I just want to close with one quick hitter question. If there was one thing brands should remember to do or not to do to engage a government leader in 2021, what would that be? Suzette, do you want to start?
Sure. I'm going to say a big thing and then I'm going to say a tactical thing. Frank, I think we said multiple times, start with the results and the benefit in mind. Ensure it's on the agenda, and then bring proof points and examples, data, and business case type things. That will really get the attention of everyone. I would say almost the reverse. As well is if you hadn't heard that it's a priority. If you don't have some, government examples to share, keep curating that one. Work on that one. Keep working on that one for a later point in time. And this is the tactical thing. And this, Margaret, this links a little bit back to the procurement, but also understand the rules for engaging in government. Because even in the initial approach, when someone does something that I know is not within the rules, that makes me question what's going to happen in the entire translation. And I know sometimes the marketers aren't as deep in some of that as maybe someone who's in a delivery mode or a very specific, more technical mode, but it really does matter. And so, make that investment in understanding, in the public sector, what things are permissible and which aren't, which, by the way, I love everyone's lovely gift, but you can't keep them. You have to give them back. That is very awkward. That's just a simple example. But if there's an active procurement going on, you don't try to get people to a certain event to talk on a certain topic. You can't do that. So be purposeful, and then show the respect of understanding the process. It's not that we can't make it better, but your investment in understanding how to make the highest quality interaction with someone in the government is a great investment for the longevity of the relationship.
That's great. Margaret, how would you answer that?
Well, the thing I would suggest respectfully you not do is sell. Selling implies you know what the solution is before you've had a discussion of the problem. So what I would suggest is partnering to understand and problem solve with a client. So even if you're responding to an RFP, identify the ways in which you can collaborate and partner and continue to learn so that whatever solution you end up delivering and proposing on is aligned with the end game. Because particularly if you're dealing with something that is not a easily spec'd item like a pen or a computer, if you're selling technology or data services or anything that has more of a dynamic set of factors around it, that ability to partner and problem solve together is absolutely critical to success. And I think it builds on a lot of the things that Suzette was mentioning, that really understanding how you solve problems in government is, at least in our government, designed not to be that efficient. The executive branch executes, but it does it with money that's appropriated by Congress. And you have to have two different houses of Congress agree on something. And you've got a host of regulations and specific laws within which that would need to happen. And so thinking about the problem as a partner, I think is the absolute must I would look for someone that I would have a long-term relationship with in government.
Thank you both. This has just been incredibly insightful, if I'm being honest. Suzette and Margaret, thank you so much for being part of our Connect 2021 virtual event.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you again.
And thanks to our audience as well.
Thank you again, Suzette, Margaret, and Frank. While we are in the final week of Connect 2021, the platform and its materials will continue to be available for your reference. Please share them with your partners and colleagues. Thank you again for joining us for Market Preview. I look forward to connecting with all of you in the near future.